Okay.
Have a good one.
You too, Bruce.
My big toe.
Oh my god, your big toe's fine.
Well, it's not.
It's fine.
I literally think I broke it.
From what? Walking on it?
No.
G-A-R-D-N-E-R.
What?
Right?
G-A-R-D-N-E-R.
What's your first name?
I just saw something I've never seen before. And Jennings. Have you had Jennings yet?
Yeah, I took this class last year.
So round. Do you have Jennings this year?
No, but I just cried in physics.
On the test?
I didn't even finish half of it.
Ava.
Did she give you guys 2 periods or like around?
I probably finished it in the first period.
I don't get it.
Do you want the answer to the last question?
Your sister works
Huh? She won't let us finish it.
Yes.
Oh.
So I got like half of the test done. She won't even let me finish it. I'm actually going crazy.
Jennings?
All right.
What about
I highlighted a phrase. Be aware of the highlighted area on question number 9. I highlighted it so it basically draws your attention to the wording. Wording counts.
I'm dying.
A little bit.
Jennings saw a kid on his phone. Threw a football at him. Missed him. Hit the map in the back. It fell over and the glass shattered on the floor.
Wait, what happened?
Nobody was hurt?
No.
Good.
He missed the kid who did a foot of football.
Wait, you threw a football at somebody?
Yeah, because they were on their phone.
Who did you throw it at?
Ryland.
Of course.
Oh.
It hit the table, hit the map in the back, and it started to fall over, and all the glass fell out of it and
Girls,
smashed on the ground.
take a look at these 2 questions and note that I have highlighted the wording on my questions. Make sure you read the questions carefully. Yes. All of these openers that we're practicing now are going to be for a grade. It's a classwork grade. It's not like a test grade or a quiz grade, but it's a classwork grade. So I need you guys to kind of get in the habit of reading each question carefully and paying close attention. just circle the correct answer, that's all you need to do, that's fine. For each question.
I'm not hungry.
Alright, so, couple of quick things. On the one I just handed back to you from yesterday, I want to go over a couple of things. I want to go over these questions quickly. You had two documents, they both addressed experiences and background in the Lowell Mills in Massachusetts. And the first question, 12, asks, which development caused young farming women in the early 1800s to seek work in New England factories? What was causing women to go from rural America to the factories in the early 1800s? The best answer choice is 1, the market revolution, because many goods women traditionally made could now be purchased at market, making women's labor less valuable at home. Women basically went to the towns and the factory cities because the market revolution caused by the industrial, the merging of factories and the merging of mass production is going to basically make women have to leave the home to make more money. Question 13, the best answer, the above excerpted autobiography, document 1, and the letter, document 2, are similar in that the best answer choice was they both attest to the insecure economic position of women in New England in the 1800s. Okay, attest to, and I'm assuming that as 11th graders you're familiar with that term. If you're not, you need to get familiar with. If I attest to something, it means that it speaks to or it addresses. Okay, so the above excerpted autobiography from document 1 and letter 2 basically show that it shows the insecure economic position of women in New England in the 1800s. Insecure economic system, which required them to leave rural America to go work in factories for what? For low wages, for poor working conditions and for long hours. 1 and 3 are the best answer choice. Now, on the one you just did, that I just collected, and guys, don't fret. It's not the end of the world. We're working, we're practicing. Okay? If you got one wrong or you got both wrong on the one I just handed back, it's not fatal. Okay? We're working on the process here. We're working on the process on how to arrive at the correct answers. The one we just did, okay? I'm going to throw a question out to you, and I want to see if you know the answer to the question I'm about to ask you. You should have gotten both of these questions right. When the founding fathers wrote the Declaration, and when they wrote the Constitution, I know we addressed this in 7th grade. I beat this into your skulls for about 2 weeks in 7th grade, and I want to see if you remember and you recall it. Founding fathers, the guys who wrote the Constitution and the guys who wrote the Declaration. Who did they believe? Who did they believe was responsible for the natural rights that people are born with? The right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. Is that a right that is granted to them by their government, or is that the rights that all people as Americans are born with? They are born with and they obtain at birth. Palin. They are born with. Government. The founding fathers were very, very clear on this. Government does not grant you your rights. Government's role is to not give you your rights and dole them out like candy or dole them out like rewards. Government's role is to protect your rights that you are all born with as American citizens. So that should have helped you answer question number 9. The passage, let's see how we did in this. The passage that we just read. The passage that we just read, which was from what document, by the way? It was from the Declaration of Independence, okay? The passage that you just read, does it suggest that the authority of government is 1, originates from the divine right of kings, 2, is based on a social contract meant to guarantee individual rights, 3, includes the power to seize private property for national defense, or 4, is the source of all natural rights of citizens? What's the correct answer? The correct answer is 2. If you put 4, I'm going to ask you to just remember that the passage suggests that the authority of government is not the source of all natural rights. Government does not grant you your rights. You are born with those rights. Back when COVID hit in 2020, there was a huge debate over this. And here in New York, Governor Cuomo took a lot of heat for this, and actually he lost a lot of respect, and he actually faced serious legal challenges on this. Governor Cuomo was telling Americans, New Yorkers, that they could only attend church services if they were vaccinated. When the pandemic first was started, he threw around the phrase, you can only attend church services if you are vaccinated. And Americans argued, many New Yorkers argued, their First Amendment rights guarantee their freedom of what? Religion. And that right must be protected. Those rights are not subject to negotiation or bargaining. Government, in other words, it's not government's role to hand out those rights or to make sure that we are granted those rights. It's government's role to make sure that those rights are protected, even in times of difficulty, like we had during COVID. So, the correct answer, how many of you got question 9 correct? Choice number 2. Okay. How many of you got question 8 correct from the Declaration? All right, that's good. Whew. Long day. 7th graders have got me. Today's Wednesday, right? It feels like our 40th day this week. But I'll get these back tomorrow. Friday, 2 days from today, I'm going to be typing up and teeing up a test that I'll be giving you next week. I'll give it to you Tuesday. It'll be a take-home test. I'm going to give you about, say, a week to complete it. It's going to be on material that we've covered up till now. You'll be able to work on it outside of class. I want you to work independently on it, okay? It's not a group effort, but I'm putting it together, and you can work on it over Thanksgiving break. It will not be due the day you get back from Thanksgiving break. I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to ask you to work on something for those 3 days and have it due when you come back. Question, are you just stretching?
Is it like multiple choice?
It's going to be multiple choice.
Is it going to be set up like the Regents test?
The Regents, in terms of the multiple choice questions, yes, but I'm not going to give you a test question on the portion of the Regents we haven't reviewed yet. We'll work on that when we get to the midterm at the end of January. Okay? Yeah.
I don't know if you just answered it, but when are we gonna start like working on like writing, like the writing portion?
We're picking up steam right after Thanksgiving. Okay? Right after Thanksgiving. All right? The writing portion, the document sets, there's a couple of other portions of the test we're going to be working on, and we're going to be inserting those into your curriculum starting when we get back from Thanksgiving break. All right. Let's take out our PowerPoints from yesterday. Slideshow 1, we're talking about revivalism and romanticism, and I want to. What was up with the lockout today? Does anybody know what that was all about?
There was a call that threatened the school, I think.
Again?
Was it from his school?
Oh boy,
I don't know.
it's always something.
We just got a phone call and was like, there's like a troubling threat.
But it wasn't directed towards school students or faculty.
Yeah, that's what I don't get, but I just stuck with the school.
All right.
They across the street.
Let's pick up where we left off. We're talking about new religious movements that are going to come about during the Great Awakening, and one of those is going to be actually emanate in New York State. We're going to see the creation of the Mormon religion, which will be established by Joseph Smith. And at the end of class yesterday, we talked how the Mormons, while started in Vermont, actually in New York, in our area, the Mormons will actually have to eventually settle in the western portion of the continent because they were not welcome in a lot of the places that they settled because of their political beliefs and because of the cultural practice that they engage in, polygamy. Mormon men and women could have multiple spouses, and everywhere they settled, Christians put up a lot of opposition to that until eventually the Mormons were forced to settle in an area isolated and desolate, and that's why they end up in Utah under Brigham Young. Another group that we're going to see emerge during this period is the Seventh-day Adventists, established in 1863, and we're going to see, generally speaking, during this period, we're going to see increased religious diversity and choice. There's going to be a lot more religious denominations to choose from. There's going to be a lot more choice. People are going to be able to pick and choose religious affiliation with a lot more opportunity during this period. So, key point, Second Great Awakening results in an explosion, a renewed emphasis on religion in people's lives, and it's going to reflect increased diversity, increased religious diversity and choice, especially with Christianity. Okay, especially with Christianity. You're going to have Protestants, you're going to have Protestant denominations, you're going to have the Roman Catholic Church. People are going to have a lot more choice. And what's unique about this Second Great Awakening is that people are going to be able to have a more individual relationship with God. Church attendance, while still important to a lot of people, church attendance is not necessarily going to be the benchmark by which people are going to measure their relationship with God. The relationship that people have with God in many ways during the Great Awakening is going to be a more personal relationship with God, not necessarily or not limited to what you would see in a church on a Sunday morning. All right. What challenges might these new religions have faced? These new religions are going to question and challenge the authority of more mainstream religions like Protestant and like the Roman Catholic Church. And for churches that are used to having people in the church building on Sunday, for churches that are used to people donating money to help maintain the church and pay for the upkeep of the church, these new types of revival meetings, these camp meetings, and these new less formal religious meetings, they're going to really challenge the supremacy of the traditional churches, because, you know, think about this: churches are competing for a limited number of believers, and each church that exists, there's not an infinite number of people in the United States. There wasn't then and there isn't now. So each of these churches, if Anna chooses one church over another, and she belongs to one church and she changes, well, how does that pastor or that leader of that church going to feel? I just lost a believer. I just lost a member of our church. If she has a family, if she's got a family of 4, husband and 2 children, well, that means that her whole family most likely is going to belong to the new church. So these new churches and these new ways of worshiping are going to challenge. They're going to challenge traditional churches. Okay? They're going to challenge traditional churches, and it's going to create rivalries between a lot of these different groups. I wrote a word on the board yesterday. I don't know whether I wrote it for you guys or my 7th graders, but when we talk about religions and we talk about this word, sects, there are a lot of Christian sects developing during this period. Sects meaning what? Branches, denominations, okay, or groups. And they're all competing, and they're all jockeying for membership. They're jockeying for each person in the community. And it's going to create competition, healthy competition in a lot of ways. A healthy competition, and it's going to give people choices. It's going to give people choices that didn't exist for a long, long time, which is a good thing, which was a good thing. Let's continue. Let's look at slide number 6. Women's roles in this religious revival. Women are going to have and girls, you know, we got 7 out of 9 of you here are ladies. Women are going to play a crucial role in religious revivals, and it's that role that they play in this religious revival that's going to give them a lot of the experience as we move into the latter part of the 19th century that women are going to get, that they might not get in, for example, the public view, like in politics or in government, but they're going to get opportunities to become leaders in many of these churches, and it's going to be opportunities that they're going to use to translate into other opportunities in American society. Women played, as I said, a crucial role in revivals. The majority of new converts were women. And when we talk about converts, we're talking about people who switched religions or people who came to a religion for the first time. The majority of new converts were women, which means if a woman was married and she becomes a convert to a particular church, chances are her family is going to follow her lead. So in a lot of ways, women were at the forefront of these new churches. Some women will become preachers and religious leaders, which in, for example, Puritan Massachusetts in the 1600s and 1700s was unthinkable. Women could be stoned, literally stoned, or exiled from the community for teaching from the Bible. It was seen as a man's domain. It was in the Puritan church. Women were thrown out of Puritan in Plymouth, Massachusetts for holding prayer meetings in their home. We read about one over summer reading. Anne Hutchinson from the Puritan colony in Massachusetts used to hold prayer meetings in her home and Bible study groups, and when the men found out about it, they basically forced her to leave the colony. Okay, and here, during this Second Great Awakening, women are becoming preachers and women are becoming church leaders. And this is going to be kind of a feather in their cap that they're going to be able to say, hey, 50 years later, 75 years later, women are going to be building on this experience that they're gaining with the church. Now, some churches today, most American churches today, allow for expanded roles for both men and women. This was not always the case. And in some denominations, like Roman Catholic Church, for example, they do not allow women preachers, or women priests. They do not allow women to hold positions of traditional authority in the Catholic Church. But certainly in most churches, in most Christian denominations today, women have a lot more say, a lot more influence, and indeed a lot more power than they did. And it really gets a start during this period, during the Second Great Awakening. Women are also going to be provided new opportunities for public speaking and organizing. If you're a church leader, you're going to have to at some point be experienced or become experienced in public speaking and in organizing. And let me tell you, if women are provided the opportunity to organize and to lead in their church, that is going to mean that women are going to start to demand and start to expect that they be given that same opportunity to do that in public life, in their community, out in their secular life, outside of the church. When we talk about life outside the church, we're talking about a term called secular. Okay? Secular relates to political life or cultural life outside of religious life. So if women are able to lead in their churches, like they are here during the Second Great Awakening, well, women are basically going to start demanding that they have those same rights in the secular world as well. It will not happen overnight. It will not happen boom, 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 but eventually, over time, women will begin more and more to earn and demand the same opportunities. All right, so I don't know why I included that there, but that's a title from a book that was basically available when I was creating this PowerPoint. I figured I would include it there. The Theology of Black Women Preachers. So how about this? Just think about this for just a second. Here is a book. Here's a book written about this period that focuses specifically on black female preachers. Black female preachers, which would 100 years before that would have been absolutely unthinkable, unheard of, and yet the Second Great Awakening is going to provide those opportunities not just to white women but to African American women as well. All right, questions on women's roles in this period. Questions on women's roles. All right, let's go to slide 7. Okay. Social reform movements. All right, and here's the biggie. All right, here is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. We talked yesterday about religious beliefs and how religious beliefs are often going to motivate people or encourage people to be engaged in social reforms. Religious revivals inspired various social reform movements. Religious movements are going to inspire various social reforms. The abolition of slavery is probably the biggest. Not probably, is the biggest. The abolition of slavery became both a moral and a religious cause. When we talk about moral, we're talking about right and wrong. And when we talk about religious, we're talking about in areas of people's faith and areas of people's belief in God. The abolition of slavery became an absolute imperative, a moral imperative and a religious imperative for many, many believers. A lot of people said and began questioning the inconsistency in owning slaves for people who claimed to be a Christian. The argument would be directed at slaveholders who claimed to be Christian. The argument that abolitionists would say, how in the world can you be considered a good Christian if you are owning and buying and selling human beings? And this moral question and this religious question is going to lead directly to the growth of the abolitionist movement. Now, that's not the only reform. The temperance movement will also address alcohol abuse. And again, the temperance movement is going to come about, the movement to ban alcohol consumption and sale. It's going to come about because reformers are going to want to improve society. Blake, we talked yesterday what group of people are going to have a vested interest in making sure that alcohol abuse does not happen. Women and children, wives and children of husbands. That's not to say that women, I'm not saying that women didn't have problems with drinking, I'm certain that women did, but women were dependent on their husbands oftentimes, which meant that if the husband was an alcoholic or he abused alcohol, the woman and the children would suffer very, very disproportionately, okay? We're also going to see prison reform and the care for the mentally ill. We're going to look later in the week at Dorothea Dix, who's going to be a prison reformer who wants to reform prison life. Back in this period of time, before the reform movements, the mentally ill, the criminals, and juveniles would all be treated and placed in one building, one jail cell or one room. Okay? The mentally ill, felons, and young people would basically be placed in the same cell or prison. And reform movements are going to start to differentiate between people who had mental illness and people who were criminals. There is a clear, and we understand it today, obviously, there's a difference between people who suffer from mental illness and people who are criminals. And mentally ill people need much different treatment than people who are repeat felons. And we're going to look at reforms that are going to provide for care of the mentally ill and for prison reform as well. Just because, reformers are going to argue, just because someone is in prison does not mean that they should not be entitled to basic health care, basic utilities that everybody else has, a bed, a roof over their head, a blanket, a place that's safe from violence. Okay, all these things are going to be things that Dorothea Dix and prison reformers are going to be working on. Dorothea Dix was a Boston school teacher who visited a prison one day in Boston. She took a tour of a prison. And it also housed mentally ill patients. And as the warden was taking her around to tour the prison and the mentally ill hospital, or what was called the insane asylum at that point, that's what they were called. They were called insane asylums. Dorothea noticed that none of the convicts or none of the inmates had blankets or sheets on their beds in their cell. And she asked the warden why. What did the warden tell her? Why the prisoners or the mentally ill did not have sheets or blankets. The belief was in the mid-19th century that the mentally ill and the crazy persons did not feel hot or cold, and if they do not feel hot or cold, then there's absolutely no need for them to have what? Sheet or a blanket. Okay? That was a common belief. So they're going to look to fix that. Prison reformers are going to look to fix that. All right? Can you think of any modern social movements inspired by religion? You know, again, connecting history then to today. I could connect one huge one that I'm very involved in this movement, and it's directly connected to my religious faith. I'm involved pretty heavily with the pro-life movement. I'm against abortion, and my church teaches me that abortion is immoral and it's wrong, and that I should do what I need to do to speak out against it and to be involved in that. That's absolutely one today. How about the civil rights movement in the 1960s? Does anybody know where the civil rights movement got its start? The push in the 1950s and 60s for black Americans to have full voting rights, to have full job opportunities, to have full access to services that white Americans, where did that movement get its start? The civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s. Martin Luther King was a what? Before that. Martin Luther King's full title is what? Before that. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a reverend. He was a pastor. the civil rights movement, the push for equality for black Americans in the 1950s and 60s was born in churches in the American South. There is an absolute connection between the civil rights movement and religion. People in the America during the 1950s and 60s, Americans used their religious beliefs to argue that blacks and whites should have the same what? Opportunities. Now, slavery was over in 1865, but did African Americans, when slavery ended, were they fully embraced? And did they have the same opportunities that Americans, all Americans? No, they didn't. And religious beliefs are going to motivate a lot of that on the part of whites and blacks. On the part of whites and blacks. How about another one? A modern social movement inspired by religion. A modern social movement inspired by religion. Let me give you a hint. Whenever there's a natural disaster somewhere in the world, hurricane, typhoon, tsunami, in addition to governments, what are some of the first groups of people who are on the scene providing help to people who suffer from natural disasters?
The blind people who look on the telephone poles stuff. Power. They're always on.
Let's just back up a sec.
I don't know what they're called. You said blind? No, I said blind people.
The line people. Let's even before the line people. What groups in our society, outside of government agencies, who we expect are going to be involved in helping, what other groups of people are there to help people with food, with clothing, with medicine? Church groups. Church groups, religious groups, Christian denominations, Jewish denominations. Every denomination available is out in the front. And why do they do that? Because we have an obligation. Religious people feel that they have an obligation to help their fellow human beings in need. So clearly, this idea of religion being involved in bringing about social change, it's an old idea, and it's certainly not an idea that is not in practice today. Religion motivates a lot of social reform movements. Religion motivates a lot of social reform movements, and I just mentioned a few of them. We could go down a laundry list of others as well. How about the idea of gay marriage? 20 years ago, before I was teaching, gay marriage was not legal in one state. 2 men or 2 women having an official marriage, spouses, it didn't mean that men and women couldn't live together, absolutely live together. But having a marriage certificate like a man and a wife does, that didn't exist 20 years ago. Well, people of faith, of all religions, of many religions, people of faith got behind the idea that if two people love one another, and if 2 people want to spend and commit their lives to one another, they should be able to do that. Religious people said they should not be prevented from doing that because love and committing to one another is what? It's a good thing. It's good for society. It's good for human beings to have companionship. It's good for people to share their lives with people they love. It's good for people to make a commitment. So there's lots of social reform movements today that still rely on religion to inspire them. Most of our social reform movements have at their core some type of religious belief, and even if it's not religious, it's absolutely oftentimes based on morality. It's based on morality. If a prisoner goes to prison, think about this one for a second. Let's say you've got the worst of the worst criminal. Let's say a murderer butchers dozens of children, goes to jail, sentenced to life in prison. Is that prisoner entitled to be fed on a daily basis while in prison?
Yes.
Is that prisoner entitled to have some type of sleeping quarters to sleep on? is that prisoner entitled to have some degree of comfort? In other words, heat when it's cold out, or air conditioning when it's hot out. Absolutely. And these basic rights that are afforded to all people are seen as a moral good, even and especially if someone is convicted of a crime. Even the worst criminal of criminals are entitled to basic human dignity and human decency. And that might not be a religious belief, but it's certainly a moral belief. So the lesson I want you to learn here, guys, on this particular slide is that these reform movements, many of them that we're talking about during the period, the 1800 to 1860, they are born out of a desire for people to basically put their religion into practice, to make sure that they are walking the walk and talking the talk. You're saying you're a Christian, you're saying you're a Catholic, you're saying you're a Protestant. Well, these reform movements are people putting their religious faith into what? Into action. They're basically backing up what they're professing by working to. All social reform movements are attempts to improve the world that we live in. Now, not every social reform ends up improving the world. Some social reforms, and I can give you a long list of them as well, many social reforms have failed miserably. And when they fail, we learn from it and we move on. But social reform at its root are attempts by people to improve society. Now, let's go on. I want to get through as much as we can. Where you got 2:15 we leave? Education and religion. Okay? Education and religion. Emphasis on education to read the Bible and improve society. The most commonly read book during the early part of our nation's history, certainly the colonial era, and even beyond the colonial era when we declared our independence, the most commonly read book is going to be the Christian Bible. Okay? Christian Bible. The establishment of many religious affiliated colleges are going to start to emerge. The establishment of many religiously affiliated colleges. Someone tell me, first university in our country, Harvard University, what was its primary purpose, Mr. Rosa, when it was established in the early 1600s? To teach people to become ministers. You are correct. To teach people to become ministers. So we're going to see the establishment of many religiously affiliated colleges during this period as well. Sunday schools are going to provide basic education for working class children. Sunday schools. Okay, that was a big phrase when I was a youngster. Sunday school. Okay, after church, we'll pick up tomorrow.